Welcome to Power Your Profits podcast, your friendly guide in bringing your business revenue to the next level. Listen as host Susie Carder hears inspiring stories of success from her fellow entrepreneurs and transformational leaders. Prepare to make significant change to your strategies as they unravel the secrets of building multi-million-dollar businesses and the most effective tips on finance, marketing, and sales accountability. If you want to make your first step towards explosive business growth, this is the right podcast for you. Without further ado, here is your host, Susie.
Okay, you have no idea how excited I am to have Leisa be on the show today. And I shared this with you when I first met you, when I realized you were in JVMM with me. It's like, oh my God, I just got your book. I was writing an article, and the way that you talked about money was so refreshing and so insightful. And I had not met you yet. And then literally that following Tuesday, we were on a JVMM call, and I had such a fan crush, girl crush, like, oh my God, I'm private messaging you. And she wasn't not nearly as excited as I was I was messaging her. So thank you for being here. Let's talk about, because I did your formal bio, but tell everybody like your badassery, like what's your jam? What do you do? Like, what have you created in the world? I love the book. It's right behind her if you can see the book. So share with us, because they know you but not know you. They just know that I'm a fan and I have a girl crush on you.
I'm a fan of yours. So this is so fun. But I love being able to share that. I think the greatest thing about my life and the work that I do today is that I have always been this person who, if I don't know how to do something, I'm going to go figure it out. And, you know, as we have talked about, came from very little. My mom was a hairdresser, and my dad sold drugs on the side and was just to give people a perspective, like we didn't have
This is a learned behavior that you have. It was not something, nobody gave it to you. There's no magic wand in this conversation.
No, I'm normal and maybe a little unusual and quirky, but what I have done for myself and for my family is I've built a legacy of wealth that will continue beyond my life and will help not just, you know, my husband and I, but our children, and I think their children. And that legacy is something I love teaching other people how to do, how to go from wherever you've come from, bust through those beliefs, figure out how to take better care of your money and be a really good steward of the money you make. And then ultimately, what are you going to do with it? And that's what I've done in my own life. I'm a multi-millionaire. I have set up many different businesses, both for my husband and for myself over the past 30 years. But I think that's really what I'd like to share.
Well, I love it, right? Because there's so many, you said a legacy, right? For legacy of wealth. I think people go, oh, what's the quick fix? And wealth is not a quick fix. Wealth is a strategy. Wealth is a long game, not a short game, right? And luckily, I was young. I was 25 years old when I met my first investment banker, who sat me down and said, Susie, you're making a lot of money. We need to put this away. And so that was the thing that saved me in all economic crisis, right? Is the long game, not the short game. And to just have that mindset so young to go, what's the long game? What's the long game? What's the long game? And not get caught up in the sparkly, yes, I want the now money now, but the long term is that legacy play. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. So what would you say that this is so in line with what I teach, right? So I'm teaching how to make it, right? How to monetize it. You're teaching the legacy piece. So what are the things we need to know? Because I think our community, we're a little more seasoned, right? They're not just starting out in business. They're accomplished in business, or this is another career that they're doing. And so they're like realizing, oh, I didn't set up for retirement. Oh, so we're trying to get the money in play so that they can start monetizing and then turn them over to you.
Yep. Yeah, totally. One thing that comes to mind is that many of us are used to putting our money back into our business because we know that we can take that money and we can make more from those decisions that we make inside of our business. But what I like to talk about, and I think is really great to, get your thoughts on too, is how can we, if we realize we don't have that savings for the future, how can we just like if we were going to pay for something, let's say $25,000, we're going to invest in a coaching program or we're going to do something. How can we get a chunk of money and literally make the decision, I want this amount of money and I'm going to go set up an investment account with it. Like just be super purposeful. And I recently had this happen with a client of mine who's been in business for 20 years. She has a very high net worth, but just like you described, no savings in retirement or earmarked for that purpose. And it took us a while to get there, but I kept saying, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And just last week, we set up her Vanguard investment accounts. And I don't advise people on their money, but there's some simple things and some simple tools that anyone can do that don't cost a lot, that are easy to set up. But she needed to have that chunk of money waiting to invest. And she's so excited. And sometimes it's just literally committing to having a chunk of money. You're going to get started and then just taking that step. Let's keep it basic and simple.
Yeah, my strategy has been just consistently take a little bit of money, right? Because a lot of people, they get, well, I know I do. When I see the chunk, then I don't want to touch the chunk. To me, savings is just as exciting as spending used to be, right? When you were young, when I was young, because my background is very similar to yours, right? We had no money. So when I was young, spending, buying the thing, right? The sexy car, the sexy shoes, the sexy bag, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't need another bag. I don't need any more shoes. I don't need, like, what do I need? And so to now the chunk, like, I just remember crying, like, I don't want to spend this. I'm like, even though I know it's for the future, I'm like, I'm not spending it. I'm just leveraging it. So that consistency of, for my real estate, for my investments, for our executive bonus plan, I think there's so many ways we can monetize our wealth. And do you get into that in the Wealth Clinic? Talk about the Wealth Clinic, because you have a Wealth Clinic. What does that mean? Because that sounds sexy. I don't know I want to go. I don't even know what it means. I'm like, I'm coming. What is it?
Yeah. So the Wealth Clinic is, imagine that I used to be a financial advisor and I really did not feel like I could help people in the ways I wanted to, which was, let's look at what's going on inside that keeps you from moving forward with the money strategies, clear out the beliefs that you have that are keeping you from moving forward. In many cases, that's a sense of I'm not enough or I don't have enough because even just like what you just said, some people get motivated by knowing that they've got $5,000 invested to start. Some people get motivated by just knowing that they're doing it one step at a time. And the point is you've got to find what works best for you. And so what I do is I teach people how to change the mindset around money and wealth creation, clear out the stuff that's not not serving you, and also bring you into a community of people who are openly, regularly talking about how can I be a better custodian of my money? How can I create passive income sources outside of my business? How can I do some other investing that I might feel too afraid to do, but as long as I have a resource that I can ask if I'm on the right track? Like, it's all the things that I love about being a certified financial planner, but without the restrictions, without actually investing people's money and having to charge them for that. I literally charge them for the recommendations of how do you take care of yourself? How do you optimize the situation? And sadly, a lot of financial advisors are kind of, their hands are tied behind their back. They can't actually do the things that I do now.
So what's the difference between having a lot of money and then building, I love the mindful wealth. So talk about the difference between that.
Yeah, the big difference is that you are not just in it from a fear play. You are not just in it to make as much money as possible, regardless of the toll it takes on you, the toll it takes on humanity, the toll it takes on the environment. Like, you are looking at how do I earn, save, and invest my money, but from a highly conscious perspective. And keep in mind, we start where we're at. It's not a utopia, but what I saw is a lot of us do things with our money out of fear rather than looking inside and saying, how does this serve me? How does it serve others? And building wealth from that place changes your life because your money has great meaning to you rather than just being about proving something or dealing with your fears, which ultimately we never get there when we're always responding from our fears. There's always another fear. There's always another fear. But if you turn it to what's meaningful and valuable and important to me, it changes the conversation in our head and we make better decisions.
Well, I love that you say that, because I do a money block exercise. And when I'm doing it with my students, I always do it for myself because it's just a check-in for me. And I realized I was doing this exercise, and the one question was, I can handle large sums of money. Like, well, I've handled large sums of money, right? So, 10 million, 15 million, right? 20 million. So I'm like, but my answer was no, I can't handle large sums of money. I'm like, where is that coming from? Well, I'm working on this project that's $1 billion project with a client. And so I'm comfortable in this million, but the B scared me. And I was like, I had to really look at that to go, well, it's just more zeros. That's what I tell my clients. It's just more zeros. The difference between 100,000 and a million is more zeros. From a million to 10 million is more zeros. From 10 million to 100 million is more zeros. But I didn't have that, like the billion word came in and I'm like, oh, can I handle this? Do I know enough to advise this person, coach this person? Because the last thing I want to do is, be a fraud, right? Be that charlatan, because there's so many in this industry. So I love that you talk about that, because wherever you are, it just follows you, right? You get comfortable on a certain level. And if you're not having a check-in, if you're not doing the work ongoingly, you can get to that upper limit conversation or that pinnacle financially and go, here it is again, which pisses me off because I've done so much work. And I'm like, here it is again.
I'm right there with you, sister. Like, this is totally the fun thing about money is that it keeps awakening us to our bigger potential, to the highest version of who we really are. Money is just a tool in that process. It really has not as much meaning as we give it. But if we see it as something that helps us wake up to our truest potential, then it's really fun to make money.
It is so fun. I always tell people math is money and money is fun. Nobody wants to do the math, but it all goes hand in hand, as you can't have the money without doing the math, right? So because you've been slaying it, right? Because we're in another group together watching you, and you guys have got to follow her, because it's such a delicious, different conversation, right? It's different than, I love the way that you talk about it, because it is so different, but the same, right? So what's been your thing to stay growing during the pandemic, right? Because people are struggling. The newest stat, I don't know if you've heard this one, 60% of small businesses have closed their door. And those are the ones that reported it, 60%. Wow. So when I look at the group that we're in, right, we've all figured it out, slayed it, turned it around, made it happen. What's been your secret sauce that has kept you growing, kept you in action? Because most people want to, put their head in the sand and they're going, I don't know if I could do it anymore, right? They're tired. I mean, we're all tired, but they're tired and they quit.
Yeah. For me, it was being able to take a high-paid one-on-one coaching practice to a high-paid group program or multiple group programs, and being able to make that transition was bumpy, to say the least, because just like we were talking about earlier, every belief that you did or did not know you had about coaching in one format has to be changed in order to really do a good job in the next format. And so we've been doing that ever since June of 2020. I literally went from reinventing my business, zero revenue in the middle of the summer, and reinventing, and now we're multiple six figures and set to more than double in the new year, all because of being willing to say, you know what you set up worked for you in the past, but you're really ready for a whole new level. And while that's going to take some time, just be totally committed to busting through the beliefs and then building the infrastructure to support it.
Yeah, I realized when, coaching clients, I can give you all the tools, all the strategy, but if we don't have our mind right, sabotage just creeps in. That's why we call it sabotage. You don't know you're sabotaging. It happens, right? And it's so important to go, if I'm reinventing myself, especially reinventing inside of this climate. And I have clients who are waiting for it to get over. It's not getting over, right? It is what it is. So we've got to reinvent it. So let's talk about some of your biggest challenges or failures that you've had in business, right? Because I think to me, that's when I earned my stripes, right? That's when I don't like it. Let me just say that. I don't like it at all, right? But it is the juice in business, right? Every one of those pinnacle stories I can share and go, but here's what I learned. Here's what I learned. Here's what I learned. What are one of those stories for you where you've had, the rug pulled out from under you, like the wind knocked out of your sails? You know those. You know that one, girl.
Oh, yeah, completely. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is not understanding how important it was to go to high tickets. So I offered low ticket group workshops for 5 or 6 years of my business. And I think while I was helping a lot of people and I was making a difference and I was learning a lot, I feel like I held myself back consistently out of this kind of small voice of, but you got to help everybody. But you got to be able to have those price points where anyone can afford them. And that now in retrospect, it does hurt, because I'm like, the sad thing about those low cost programs is people don't always show up. They pay their money. They're not committed. You get a lot of scarcity. And I started to let that scarcity infect my thoughts about how I could make an impact in people's lives, because there's a transference of consciousness that goes both ways. I didn't understand this, meaning who we are matters a lot to who we serve, but who they are and who we attract and serve matters a lot to what we are capable of doing. And we have to be very careful not to hang out with a whole bunch of people that aren't at the level of where we are personally. And I did that for a long time, and I just can't do that anymore.
I got chills, girl. I got chills. That's awesome. Right. And thank you for the authenticity, right? Because I always tell my clients, what's frustrating about our industry is they're saying, go sell the low-hanging fruit. Well, in order for you to make I talk about building 7-figure businesses, you don't have enough client base to do that. You're not that established at most people. And then if you do have the people in your database, they're not qualified to go to the next level. And so then you're stuck playing in that level, and you've got to grow, right? So I love that. And I love that you just shared that, because it is, I always started, I'm like, I'm doing too much work for this amount of money and keep raising my prices. I'm doing too much work for that, but I keep raising my money. But I realized the first time I paid $100,000 to get a coach, right? Oh man, I had the butt puckered, right? I was like, but I knew she was going to help me with like the not concept, not another class. No, do this, get this, right? That's what I love, right? Do this, get this, because I'm coachable too. Like, okay. Literally the next week I charged somebody $100,000. I'm like, if I'm paying that, I'm charging that, because I'm not paying that and not charging it. I'm like, okay, it was my mindset that was just holding me back. Because the minute I did it, I think that's the value of investing in like the WealthClinic, investing in like our global leadership, is you can't charge that unless you know what it's like to swipe that card. And there is a different level of, I've got to do this work. Now, I still have people that pay $35,000 and don't do the homework, which just blows my mind. Like, how do you not do the homework and you are paying $35,000? But, that's their mindset. We're working through it.
Yeah. I'll share one other thing, because I want everyone to know this isn't my only business. My husband and I run a commercial building. We have an Airbnb business. We are doing property development all at the same time that I'm running this business. So one of the things that actually helped me get real with myself was realizing that I could make so much more money on my own investing, and that I couldn't afford to help people that couldn't pay me what I would pay myself to have that time. And I'm like, wait a minute, your whole life is not in alignment. And some of us, especially, I know I've met people in your community, they are seasoned travelers. They are experts at what they do. And that realization of stepping into just how amazing you are and being willing to charge for it was something I was still doing, even though I've been working on this money stuff for all these years. So I just say to everyone, find the conversation that you need to have with yourself or your coach to break that cycle once and for all. Because once you do it, like Susie said, all of a sudden you're charging $100,000 because you paid it. Like that was the conversation you needed. Somebody else might need something else, but like do it, because your time is money. Money is time, and money loves speed. So like, let's move fast.
Right. And I love, we're birds of a feather, and we've talked about this before. We have the same thing, right? We have the wealth strategy of real estate and apartment buildings and, multiple income coming in. And this business, this training and consulting business, allows me to get the cash to invest in the real estate. I've made millions over there, right? That's way easier money than this. Right? I love doing this. This is my passion. This is, it creates the cash flow to create the wealth over here. So I need you guys to hear that, right? It's not just the business. The business has always allowed me to either do another business, leverage my wealth, invest in my portfolio, to go, I'm not just taking cash from my business, right? I'm monetizing it and going, what's the play? What's the strategy? And know that it's not one and done, right? As the economy changes, because there'll always be something. I was talking to somebody last week and they're like, Susie, I asked that question, like, what's the, what have you been doing to grow in the pandemic? He said, there's always a pandemic. There was 9/11. There was the economic crisis. There was the collapse of the finances. There was a recession. This is just another version, name something else. Because if you don't learn to have that resiliency, that's when you realize, this is what I need to work on. I'm not going to quit, right? I think you have it. I have it. I'm like, I'm not quitting. Just got to figure. I get mad. I'm like, I get mad if I don't hit my goals. Like, what is wrong? Something's not working. So what would you say the one thing, like if you look at your life and you go, at our deathbed, what's that one thing, Leisa, you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for being someone who loves myself and loves others equally. Like there's a sense of equanimity that really permeates like the work that I do, the relationships that I form, and the legacy that I leave behind me is that I wasn't just like this completely self-centered person that was all about me, but it was like everyone that I come in contact, I treat them as, I wish to be treated, but that goes really, really deep. That's more important than anything to me.
I love it. And then what's one question you wish I would have asked about you or your business or what we need to know?
The question that I think would have been interesting to ask is about, I have two audiences, and that's not a smart business decision, but why was that so important to you, even if it wasn't all about the money?
And so what's the answer to that? I'm like, okay, so what's the answer?
Okay. So in my book, you aren't supposed to do this. I wrote to two audiences, and that's why it probably took me 5 years to write it. The two audiences are one that looks very much like me and you, where we built the wealth, we made the good decisions, we took really good care of ourselves. That's our story. But the other story that was just as important to me was the story of people who haven't had the thought process, the mindset, the things that we did from an early age. They're more like my parents. And I really, really, really wanted to be able to make a difference in the lives of people who, haven't had the advantages or the opportunities to turn their life around as it pertains to money. I also wanted to remind people like Susie and me, which I think you and I both are similar in this, that there's so much more to money, and that you have to find a really healthy balance between the pursuit of money and then all the super important things in life, because your fascination with money can become more important than other things. And that's not how you and I want to live.
Right. No. Right. I was took this summer and I took 6 weeks to really look at right now, right? This business, this brand I launched 3 years ago. I'm like, is this what I want to do? Right? Because part of it's not fun, and I don't want to do that. I'm too old, right? I'm just going to say it. I'm too old, too seasoned. I always say seasoned, but to do stuff that's not fun, right? And fun from the standpoint of, I want the fulfillment, but it's got to be fun for me too. And I have to have quality of life. And so from that time, which is exactly what you're speaking to, is to go, what do I need to change, tweak, modify so that it's not work? Because I never want to work, right? I love what I do. And the minute it starts feeling like work, that's my indicator. It goes, ooh, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And I think if you get anything from this interview is really look at it. One, it's never too late, right? To leverage your wealth. It's never too late. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are, right? I started at 25. I just, met Suzanne Latour. I'll never forget her because she was just one of those, like, this is what we're going to do. And sometimes you need that, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So I love that. So how do people find you, Leisa?
So the best place is my website, WealthClinic.com. And you can learn about the book. You can learn about my interview with Gaia. You can take a quiz about your money and your relationship with money and chakras, which is really fun too. But that's a great place to get started.
Yeah. So I want you to go take the quiz so that you can learn about your money chakras and what's stopping you, so that it's one little thing that can change the trajectory of your life. Right. And I love that's what you're about. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being my sister in this journey. Thank you for having such a powerful conversation in relationship with money and being so honest and real, just to share that, you're constantly tweaking what you're up to and what you're doing. We're never done, right? I don't think I'm done. The minute I think I'm done, I think we're dead, right? So thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for listening to this episode of Power Your Profits. Make sure you like, follow, and more importantly, make sure you go find Leisa, get the book. It's juicy, juicy, juicy. Loved it, loved it, loved it. It was one of those super speed reads you just didn't want to put down. That's how good it was, and so fascinating. Just a different spin on the money conversation. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Power Your Profits podcast. Let these building blocks from today's most successful industry leaders equip you with the necessary resources and tools to finally establish the highly profitable business of your dreams. Want to hear more? Listen to more episodes at https://poweryourprofitspodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. Now is your time to rise to the top of your game, so be sure to catch our next episode. Until next time.